Hello and welcome back to One Comedian, Eight Questions. Yes, we are back doing more of it. Yes, that means the Edinburgh Fringe is still upon us, and it means we're time to promote more Edinburgh Fringe shows and to talk to some more amazing comedians. My guest today, and it's very apt, is best known for a brand new BBC Scotland pilot or short, depends on how you want to word it. We'll find that out later. It's one and only Zara Grunton.
Hello, nice to meet you.
And so we shall spin the wheel and start with question number one. Let's see what it'll be. There we go. So let's start. How did you get into the world I call comedy?
Very good question. I think as a millennial and the first generation to grow up with the internet, that's where it started for me. So the very first bits of comedy I started to make were on YouTube. I started doing musical parodies, I think in 2012. And then I also got into comedy because it's a bit random, but I did a PhD at Glasgow University in crayfish and zoology. And the first time I tried stand up was because I was invited to be part of a night called Bright Club where scientists do stand up about their specialist subjects. So my first on stage comedy was because of the crayfish that I was studying, and my first like filmed stuff was because of the internet.
And was it harder to make comedy about crayfish than it would be your average run-of-the-mill jokes?
I actually found it easier because I had a theme.
Yeah,
So, I wasn't just starting, because to start with nothing is quite overwhelming, I think. So, having a really clear brief, you have to write something about crayfish
yeah,
specifically, I found quite helpful for my first bit of material.
yeah. And did it also help you to decide what type of style you were going to go with because you knew what topic you're after and you knew that there might be certain avenues you could take?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it was my very first time doing stand-up, so I didn't really know what my style was at that point. But having said that, I did include in that very first set some musical comedy, and I did a parody of Lady Gaga, but made it about crayfish. So I think musical stuff has always, even from the beginning when I was just starting out, been something that am attracted to. So yeah.
Yeah. And so let's spin the wheel and let's go to question number two, the start of the downhill spiral where we forget what number we're on, but luckily I know. And so when you're doing the work in progress, do you walk on stage with a notebook or is it all inside your head?
I do it inside my head. And actually, I think I take quite a non-traditional approach to the work in progress because I haven't done any public work in progresses for my friend show. I've only done private performance with friends, partly because I'm worried that people will buy tickets for the work in progress and then they won't buy tickets for the fringe. So I was like, I'm not gonna shut that down. But also there's spoilers. I just didn't want secrets getting out about what's in my show. So but I do try and make it as real as possible when I'm doing even those private work in progresses. I try and be off book and I try and make it as real as I can. So yeah, I don't tend to take a book on.
Yeah. And do you think that doing it privately makes it more nerve-wracking, or do you think it makes it less nerve-wracking because you sort of know the audience that are coming to watch it?
In a way, it's more nerve-wracking doing it to your friends and family. I think they're the hardest audience because they're going to be honest with you. And that's another reason I do that because people, that I'm close to will give me honest feedback. Um, Whereas I don't know how reliable other audiences might be. So yeah, it's tougher in a way, but then also easier in a way because I know what I'm getting back is
Yeah,
is the truth.
yeah. And so let's move on to question number three and spin the wheel. And also to apologise, I forgot to press record on the screen recording for the wheel. So the wheel has begun now for anyone wondering where the wheel went. Let's spin on to question number three. And that was a good, smooth attraction to it. How do you handle those pesky hecklers when you're on stage?
Well, I've been very fortunate in that I haven't really had much experience with that at all. And I don't know if it's because I'm doing character comedy,
Yeah,
and usually the character that I do is well, this it's a woman called Aileen who's from the West End of Glasgow, and she's quite a formidable woman. So I think maybe people are a little bit scared
yeah,
of Aileen, and if anything, she's going to be the one dishing out insults. So far so good. I mean, I during the Fringe it could all change. I don't know who's going to turn up, but I think there's something about being in character that makes it easier.
yeah. And do you think it's also because there's not as much heckling that happens as much because audiences now don't feel the rush to do it as much because people are now more invited to do it or other comedians are more likely to choose someone to talk to. Do you think that's why the hecklers are not as common as they might have been 20, 15, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think a lot of comedy clubs these days are very good at setting out the rules from the offset, and the compere will often remind people that you're not meant to heckle. And also, in my experience, I suppose I have quite a particular audience who book tickets to come and see me, and I'm very fortunate in that the people that have come to see me so far have been really lovely and generous, friendly audiences. So I think the people who come to my shows tend to not be as combative,
Yeah,
maybe, as like a mainstream audience.
yeah. And do you think that having comedians choosing to let people heckle, do you think that sort of then that makes sure that people know that you can heckle, but there's ways of doing it without sounding malicious?
Yeah, I mean, is it James Acaster that invited heckles? Did he not have a show where he did that?
He did. There wasn't as many as you would expect, but there was three or four or five. I can't remember now, but there wasn't as many as the title suggests.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, um I don't think heckling always comes from a bad place. I think sometimes people just don't understand maybe the format of how comedy works, and they maybe go and see someone and they feel like they know that person because they follow them, and they think that it's more like a conversation. So maybe it's just about setting expectations from the beginning.
Yeah. And so we shall spin on, and that's a better catchphrase than the last one. And that one might stay, who knows? Let's spin on to question number four. And luckily, I remember that it's number four. Let's find out what it will be. Oh, so this might change over time, but as of this year, how long does it take to make your Edinburgh Fringe poster?
How long did it take? So well, I guess there was the kind of coming out of the idea,
Yeah,
which was relatively quick. So that didn't take too long. I had a clear idea from the beginning. The photography for the poster took, I don't know, an hour.
mm,
And I was very lucky I had a friend who did that for me. But then there's his time to then edit the photos and pick out a selection that he sent on to me. I also, for my poster, worked with an illustrator, an amazing artist in Glasgow called Libby Walker, who does really gorgeous illustrations. And I'd worked with her on another project last year, a different poster, actually, for a different show. So we ended up kind of repurposing that artwork for my friend's show and just adjusting it a little bit. Now, in terms of how much time Libby must have spent on that original poster, probably quite a lot of time. It's really lovely work that she's done. But for the Fringe, it was more or less ready to go. And then I also very lucky my brother's a graphic designer, so when it came to adding logos and
yeah,
text, he was able to help me out with that. So I really pulled a lot of favors this year. So actually, we pulled it together very quickly. Like I would say, in the space of a couple of weeks, we had it ready to go. So I was quite ahead of the curve this year.
And do you think that doing the poster is probably, even though creating the show and doing the show is really hard, do you think that making the poster to try and get the idea of your show across to people that might just either see it online or might walk past it, do you think that's the hardest bit of the fringe process? After the performance element and getting the show ready, do you think that's the hardest, another hard element of the fringe process?
That's a good question. I mean, so yeah, we're leaving aside the kind of developing the actual show. I think I didn't find it too difficult because I was so lucky to have all these talented people that were willing to give me a hand with it. If I didn't have that, then I could see, the firstly like the expense of your photography, of your design work, finding people who you trust. I could see that being quite difficult. So I think I was quite lucky, and probably what I've found more difficult is I don't know, just the other, like the admin and how much time the admin takes of, you know, from registering your show to thinking about, your insurance, your finding a technician. That took me a long time to find a tech for my show. All of the PR, that takes a lot of time because I'm doing it on my own. Writing a press release, sending that out. I think those bits definitely have been a bigger time suck than the poster, which was relatively easy for me.
Yeah, and do you think that, in your opinion, do you think the poster, uh, like explains the in not so many words because of its words on the poster, but does it explain what the show, what audience can expect to get from the show? Do you think it does that really well?
I'm pleased with what we came out with, but I think it is really difficult to get across exactly what people are going to get when they come to see me. And I think that's where the poster's great and it's important to have that kind of shop front, but I think it's also important to have videos and, you know, clips of, well, in my case, my character to try and bring it to
Yeah,
life a little bit more.
yeah. Yeah, and do you think that's the hardest bit? Because you're doing it in a character, it's hard. You have to sort of like sell the character, but also make it clear that it's you that is the character, so that if people like you, they can come and see it still, even if they might not be familiar with the character. Do you think that's even harder in your case?
Yeah, there's a kind of tension there, isn't there? Like I think the reason I've ended up in the position of doing the Fringe is because of the popularity of one character in particular, that alien character that I do. So I don't find it difficult being alien and selling that character because I know there's already a market for that. But me as myself, um, maybe that is a harder sell. And I think I use social media and I do post stuff on that as me. And I have done, gigs on the circuit as myself. So I've built up, some interest for me. But even when I did my very, very first show, so not the Fringe, but in Glasgow, I did an hour-long show last year. I was very aware that people were booking the show to come to see Aileen. They weren't booking the show to come to see me. And I had to kind of accept that the material that I wanted to do as myself maybe wasn't what people wanted to see. And I ended up rethinking the structure of my show completely and really bringing as much Alien as I could into the show because I felt actually that's what people are there for.
Yeah, yeah, and do you think do you think that's a positive thing because you know that you had this idea for this character, but then you found out that not only do you love the character, but other people do. And do you think that's a positive thing, not just for comedy, but in just in general? Do you think that's more of a positive aspect?
Yeah, I think I'm really happy that I could never have predicted that this character would resonate so much. You put out stuff all the time, you don't know what's going to take off, and I think it is positive. I think it shows that through platforms like TikTok, you can experiment and you don't know where it's going to go, and it's an amazing platform that can lead to where I am now, where I'm doing a live show based on this character, and it's been a really great experience so far.
Yeah. And do you think the other positive thing is that the rise of comedy characters are coming back into to fashion. So you've got your mainstays like your Alan Partridge, but the idea of having a character that you can then use in multiple mediums, do you think that that's positive because that form might not have been as well regarded, but now you can probably name five or six on the circuit alone. Do you think that's another step into help show that character comedy is still a thriving area in the ever growing world of comedy?
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, it's amazing all the comics that are popping up that are doing character
Yeah,
comedy specifically. You know, Frankie Monroe, that character, and Lorna Rose Treen does loads of amazing characters. Like it does feel like we're riding a wave at the moment where it's becoming well, it's popular,
yeah,
and I think you know the stand up is the dominant genre, I guess, at the fringe. But for me, some of my favorite comedy is character driven. You mentioned Alan Partridge. I think there's something really playful and fun about character comedy, and yeah, I'm so happy that it's making this comeback, and also it's a vehicle to doing stuff on TV as well and doing scripted stuff. You know, the characters that you experiment with either online or on stage can eventually lead to scripted comedy the same way that Alan Partridge did.
yeah,
And I think that's really cool.
yeah. And I think that showing that character comedy still works, you have this aspect of you can do a lot more as a character. So you wouldn't. I don't think Steve Coogan otherwise would have ever thought of creating an audio thing where Alan's trapped inside someone's porch, and
Yeah,
because that sounds like a really heavily visual thing, but you can then sort of picture that, and I think that's what character comedy is that you might not get. So if Steve Coogan did it as himself, you probably
yeah,
couldn't imagine in it as much as you could Alan being really sweaty
yeah,
and reading these pizza leaflets. And I think that's what's the aspect of character comedy that will stay on because now that we've the popularity of podcasts and all this, you can then go, right, I've got this character, people have seen it, now they'll be able to picture it in order. Do you think that's helped to develop the genre as well as having all these characters?
yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think what I really love about character comedy is you can really commit to the bit.
Yeah,
And you can take, I last year I was asked to compare a community gala day in the West End of Glasgow. And I did it in character as Aileen. And because it's the kind of thing that she would do. And it was really fun. We had like local choirs and it was very like, I don't know if you know, probably don't know the West End of Glasgow, but it's a very kind of parochial, um, middle class Waitrose centered kind of vibe, right? And I really loved, being alien in her natural environment. And then also last year I did some shows which I called Alien's World Tour.
yeah.
But what I did was I booked three bowling clubs in the West End of Glasgow that were within walking distance of each other. So it covered a distance of less than a mile.
Yeah,
And that for me I love the opportunity to commit to the bit
yeah.
in character. You can really see how far you can push it, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that aspect really works. There's an Australian I'm gonna call it topical. I don't know what genre you would class it in because it's like every program ever exists emerged into one, and they were doing a world tour, but they were only doing one night in one city in Melbourne, so they were really going anywhere else other than
Yeah.
one city, and that aspect really works. And one thing I think should happen before we move on is that I think that they should have Alan Partridge as a compare and then have as many comedy characters as possible. So you don't no longer need your hierarchy of who's in the middle, who's at the end, but you just
Mm.
get some of the best comedy characters either off TV, off radio, and on stage. And I think that would be the most weirdest thing ever because it would just be funny. Because
Yeah.
Alan trying to work on what on earth is going on because that's not his natural habitat.
Yeah.
I think that would work because it would help show off these characters to another audience, and I think that that's what's positive is that because you've got the characters on TV, because you've got so many different mediums, you can show them off to wider audience. Do you think that helps when you develop the character because you know that if you do it on stage, that audience will see it, but then because that character isn't stuck in one medium, you can then go, I'll spread it out to other audiences that way. Do you think that what works for you?
Yeah, I guess my process is testing out little ideas using TikTok, and
Yeah,
that's where the original character came from. And then when I've performed it live, what has been, I think what I've got out of that has been the chance to interact with real people. And that's where a lot of the comedy gold comes from because people love seeing the character in the wild. And it's funnily enough, improv is something that terrifies me as myself.
yeah,
But there's something about doing it as Alien that makes it safer somehow. And it's not, if people don't find it funny, it's okay. It's not me. It's Alien. It's her fault. And you can say things that you wouldn't say. Um, so yeah, I think I get a lot out of both doing stuff online, doing stuff live. And what I'm looking forward to with doing the Fringe is, broadening Alien's world much wider. She's still so parochial and in her little bubble, but being in the middle of this big international festival, I think is going to be really interesting. And despite her being so specific to the West End of Glasgow, there are aliens all over the UK, all over the world. Like I say, if you were to draw a map of the locations of Waitrose, you would find equivalent women all over.
yeah. And so let's spin on to question number 5. I think that's my own fault for doing maths-based things and I forget what number we're on. So what TV show as a child may have helped inspire your not just you wanting to possibly do entertaining or in that place, but it inspire you into enjoying and loving the world of ha 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 comedy.
There's so much. I consumed so much comedy, particularly when I was a teenager. Smack the Pony was huge for me. I absolutely loved it. I had the DVD and I suppose I didn't think about it at the time, but the fact that it was women, all women being really funny was quite subversive and that weirdly and it was a radical thing and it even now is kind of a radical thing. Like how often do you see all women
Yeah,
lineups? Almost never, and that was a long time ago. So Smack the Pony, definitely. Other sketch shows, Lemmy's show.
yeah,
I was so obsessed with Lemmy when I found him online. It was his website I first came across with his swearing xylophone and all kinds of mad little things that he'd built. And then his YouTube videos like the birthday card and Requiem, and then eventually his sketch show. So I kind of followed Lemmy all the way through, and I'm still now a massive fan of everything that he does. And he was really a proper innovator when you think about it, because he was someone who started online before anyone was really doing anything like that. And then it really kind of propelled him into making this amazing sketch show. So I find him very inspiring.
yeah. And I think that what really works for Lemmy is because he titled it the Lemmy Show. I think that that's what really works because it sounds really good in a Scottish accent. So
Yeah,
he's picked the perfect title for him because he could just say it. Everyone just go, yeah, perfect.
yeah,
We don't need any other title. That's fine. That's perfect. We love hearing it. You can say it as many times as you like, and we won't care. And I think that's what really works. It's simple. It's a simple title, but it also captures who he is. It's him.
completely. And what I think's so cool about Lemmy as well is, he's rooted in Glasgow, but he has such a wide audience all
Yeah,
over the UK, and I think often in Scotland there's maybe this idea that we are, Scottish comedy is like a genre and it's not going to appeal to anybody else, but he just shows that you can be really outward looking and, people all over the world love Lemmy.
yeah, yeah. And having him doing his stuff on Twitch and streaming on YouTube. Nowhere else can you get a man like gets so angry in the night garden, and that's the type of thing that works really well because even though he's not on stage performing, he's still performing the anger of how
Yeah.
he hates each individual character in a children's program. And I think that makes him that's what makes him, and that's what makes his humor unique because no one else can get away with what showing people a clip of In the Night Garden and going, I hate that character, I hate
Yeah.
that character, and I definitely hate that one because he's. And I think that's what works in comedy in general is that once you've found your audience, they'll just go with you wherever you go. And do you think that's why comedy can transition to online even after the comedian isn't doing as much comedy, but they're still entertaining people? Do you think that's why audiences are willing to transfer over?
I think so. I think the audience gets invested in the performer and they want to stay engaged. And when Lemmy's show ended, people were still hungry for his style of comedy. And again, he continues to be kind of quite innovative, really, in the way that he's worked. He's created this platform for himself on Twitch, and he's still got this massive following, and he's just being himself. So. Um, yeah, I think I mean I follow lots of comedians whose shows that I watched on and I guess that's just the age we're in with social media, isn't it? You can access the people that you admire.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it gives you more of a freedom. So it's like when you see actors, they might not have as much time to perform because they might not get as many gigs as they would hope. But having online, it means they can create something and they can perform and they'll have an audience watching. So the great example I always use, just because it's even weirder than anything Richard Herring would ever do, is Ben Rufus Green, who's an actor. He was in Dinosaur. And he does this thing on a Sunday called Washing Up Club, where he washes up pots and pans and dishes, whatever he's not washed that week.
Yeah,
I don't know how he stores them, but he has an audience captured and really want to watch him wash pans and have a conversation with him whilst he's chasing a cat around and
I
washing
love that.
dishes. And that's what's good about the internet is that nowhere
Mm.
else would you be able to get away with washing a tuna tin or washing some rubbish that you feel guilty about just chucking away because you don't want it going to landfill really dirty. And do you think that that's the next evolution for performers is that when they've not got any time to perform on stage, do you think that that's the next evolution that they'll have another way of showing their craft?
Yeah, I think that's already happening. We saw this amazing, wave of new comedy and new entertainment on the internet. So it's definitely fulfilling that function already, and it has been since 2020. I guess the challenge is trying not to let the internet completely consume
Yeah,
all of your time, which is very easy to do as well, and having the boundaries as well. I suppose the way social media is designed is you feel like you have to share a lot of yourself, and keeping boundaries between you and you know the public or whatever is probably a healthy thing to try and maintain as well, but difficult.
yeah. And so let's spin on to question number six. See, we've kept that catchphrase going a lot better than the last one.
This
Let's
is good. I like the format.
Yeah, thank you. So, when was the first time you thought that it was the right time and you thought that it was allowed to call yourself a comedian?
Oh, that is a good question. It took me a long time. I think I'm trying to think when I changed my bio, on my social media.
Uh,
I don't even know if I call myself a comedian on that, actually. I mean, probably when I did my first full hour-long show, which was last March. I'm pretty sure at that point I was like, okay, I've
yeah,
sold out a show, I've done live comedy, I am now a comedian. But I don't know, I think it's probably a confidence thing, isn't it? And I think on paper I was probably a comedian before then. Our people on TikTok comedians. Sometimes there's a little, there's debate around that, but so many different genres of comedy. What is a comedian? Is it someone who does sketches online? Is it someone who does stand-up? Is it a writer?
Yeah,
So yeah, it took me a while, but I got there.
yeah, and I think that that's the thing that really intrigues me in general is that there's like when you do certain jobs, there's certain aspects when you can call yourself or whatever because you've done the job for a while and you've actually earned that position. So you
Mm.
can't really call yourself a chef because you might work in the kitchen, but you're not the chef just yet. And I think that comedy is the only industry that I can think of where there is no time frame to call yourself a comedian. I think
Mhm.
that's a lot harder for newer people getting into it because they're not too sure where the boundary is from when they can say yes, I am a comedian.
I mean, maybe it's about when you start getting paid for it.
Yeah,
If you've done a couple of open mics, it might be a bit cheeky to then call yourself a comedian. But if you're regularly getting paid work for it
yeah,
and there's a kind of professionalization of what you're doing, I think that would be fair enough. But yeah, people are happy to self-describe, each to their own. When you feel confident, why not?
yeah. And so let's spin on to question. I'm hoping I'm right. Number 7. And I hope someone's been counting because it wasn't me, it seems. And so let's get down to business. What is your Edinburgh Fringe show about this year?
Excellent question. So, my friend show is called Zara Gladman is Aileen, Cameron's Gap Year fundraiser. And the concept of the show is Aileen, this mum that I keep talking about from the West End of Glasgow, she's coming to Edinburgh to raise money to send her son Cameron on his gap year. So there was just something funny to me about the idea of a very privileged person demanding money from the public. So that's what it is. And the way I've designed the show is it is like a fundraiser. So there's going to be a raffle. You get a free raffle ticket if you come to the show. There's going to be various musical entertainment, cultural entertainment. There's going to be a little bit of drama because Aileen, can't help herself.
Yeah,
And there's some musical theatre moments as well. So it's a fun hour, I like to think, and it's very alien. So if you want to come and experience what it's like to hang out with a mother from the West End of Glasgow, then this is the time.
and this is the better one. Where and when can people see your show?
So, where you can see the show from the 29th of July to the 10th of August, and it's at the Monkey Barrel Hive 2, which is on Nidgee Street, and it's usually a nightclub called the Hive. Apparently, there's a thing called Hive till 5 where people go clubbing until 5, and
Brilliant.
apparently that is happening during the Fringe. So, I'm looking forward to the smell when I have to take over the venue each day. Hopefully, it won't be too bad.
Yeah. And where can people purchase tickets?
Well, as of today, it is completely sold out. However, which is crazy, but the Monkey Barrel do an amazing thing where they keep back 10% of tickets on the door as pay what you can. So every day, if you come down a wee bit before the show, you can queue up and you can get in with one of the tickets on the door. So in my case, there'll be at least 6 tickets every day up for grabs for anyone who just missed out the advance sales.
Yeah. And do you think that gives you a lot of confidence when you find out that your show's sold out and that you can confidently say you're gonna have a packed house?
It's definitely helping with the nerves and the anxiety around it because having at least 50 odd people in the room is going to help, I think. It's going to feel like a real community fundraiser event. The raffle is going to be a legit raffle. I've got a few prizes. If there were 3 people in the room, it might be a little bit awkward. So I'm so grateful to everybody who's booked a ticket in advance because I really do appreciate the support and I don't take it for granted either. So I'm very happy.
And was this year's show because of the other elements in it, not just the character, do you think this show was a lot harder to piece together because you've got to make sure that the story works as well as making sure that each element is as interactive and, as you said, with the raffle as fair as possible because it's a genuine raffle, not just a comical raffle that ends nowhere. Do you think that made it harder to try and make sure the show worked?
It's definitely an ambitious show. There is a raffle. There is live music. So there's guitar, piano, drums. There are video elements.
Yeah,
There's interaction. There's, you know, big musical numbers. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that has been, I didn't find it difficult to piece together. But I was conscious that I needed tech support
yeah,
on the night because there's just too many things for me to manage that could potentially go wrong. And I did find it quite hard trying to find an Edinburgh-based technician. That took me a while, and that was a constant anxiety. Like, oh no, what if I don't find anyone? How am I gonna pull this off? Because I'm producing it myself. But thankfully, I did find someone. He's great, and we've met up a few times, even ahead of our tech run to go through the queues. So that's been fine. And in terms of the content, that the actual content of the show wasn't too difficult to piece together because I've tested a lot of it ahead of time. I did, my show last March. There's a little bit of that I'm putting in this. And then my Aliens World tour in November last year. There's some material from that which has also made its way in here. And then there's some new stuff, but it's been good. It's been good so far, and having a little private work in progress with friends was so helpful, and kind of brought to light things that I realized, okay, no, I need to move that there, and I need to explain this a bit better and whatnot. So it's coming together.
yeah. And when you were trying to find the venue, do you think the hardest part of that was making sure that their PA system and their tech stuff worked for what you needed? So instead of just having a small project, you had to make sure that it was loud enough. And do you think that was the hardest bit of searching for which venue you wanted to approach and say, can I do my show here?
Well, I went to the Fringe last year just as an audience member, so I saw different venues as a punter. And I'd been to shows at the Monkey Barrel before that had lots of tech. So I saw Stevie Martin's show, Clout, which is amazing. I think she's doing the Fringe again this year. And she had a projector, she had audio cues, she had all these things that looked quite complicated. Also saw Phil Ellis, who also had visuals. So I was confident when I approached Monkey Barrel that they would be able to support the kind of tech that I needed. And the tech contact that I've been given in that venue has been really helpful, and he gets back really quickly. Because one of the things I realized I needed this year is a Britney mic. So Aileen's going to be wearing, almost like a kind of motivational speaker. I've invested in a Britney mic, but obviously that's an extra bit of tech that I need to make sure works in the venue. But I've spoken to the technician there, and they're confident it will be fine. And I tested it in my work in progress. So yeah, I think hopefully, I know things will go wrong, and I need to accept that. But so far, it's feeling organized and like it's going to work out.
Yeah, and I think having the visual element, from what I've seen from when Next Up have streamed Edinburgh Fringe in the past, you can sort of feel that you're immersed in this world because you're on stage, you've got what's happening then, and then having elements on video. So I think it was Stephen Buchanan, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He had the element of, even though he had a lot going on stage, you could feel some of the backstory for the story that was filmed in advance. And do you think that for you as a performer helps you work out what is the story and how am I going to help build the world if some people might be new to the character because they might have discovered and enjoyed the look of the poster when they've
Yeah.
arrived at the fringe.
Yeah, Stephen Buchanan's fantastic, and I think I know the show that you're talking about. It's maybe Caricature. We had some video stuff on stage. I am also using video, partly to do what you're talking about, to deepen the world and to keep the story going and to give people a good flavor of who Alien is, but also to give me time to get off stage and to get changed into a different costume. So there's a logistical thing, but also I am taking the opportunity to push the story along. And, video is my natural comfort zone.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I feel confident about that part of the show because I don't need to worry about it. I just need to play a video.
yeah. And I think that that's what a lot of people don't sort of see from an audience point of view. If they're an audience that don't know the ins and outs of theatre in general, I know a lot of audience now are more aware of the backstage aspect, but I think that no one gets that when you're on your own and you've got a change. It's even though a quick change, it's not as difficult as you think to. You have to sort of work out at what point do you sort of make sure something happens on stage, whether or not that be a blackout with audio playing or a
Mm.
video? Do you think that that's also a good aspect of using the video because you know that you can still make the audience laugh whilst you're whilst you're frantically getting to the next thing because you know that you're not you know you've got haven't got a lot of time and it takes years to learn the art of quick change and so it's like you have to make sure every piece of items is on correctly. Do you think that's why video is another way of of keeping the audience as as engaged as you want them to be?
Definitely. And I did test this idea out when I did my show in March last year. I had quite a few costume changes and I made some sketches, almost like fake adverts
Yeah,
while I was off stage. And it was nice because while I was, pulling on a wig and stuff, I could hear people laughing. So I knew that it's almost doing the job of a compere. They were keeping that energy going. They were keeping
yeah,
people engaged so that when I came back on stage, that energy was still there and I hadn't lost momentum.
yeah. And so let's spin on to question number 8. I hope it's number 8, but let's find out. Well, we won't find out until someone actually does the maths. Oh, we've had a repeat, so let's spin again. The perks of having a wheel where you have so many questions, you'll find a repeat. So, in your own opinion, and it could be interpreted in many different ways, what do you think personally the is the future of comedy going to look like?
Ooh, that's a big question, isn't it? I guess there's what I hope it will look like, and that is more diverse. I think one of the great things about TikTok is that anybody who has a phone and has the internet can start making comedy. And because of that, I think we've seen online a much more diverse representation of different people, different voices, different backgrounds, people who wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable going into a comedy club, people who might not be able-bodied.
Yeah,
They might have a long-term health condition, they can't go out, but they can do sketches at home. And I think that's been really amazing. So what I would hope is that we continue to see that trend and that some of the people that you don't see at the moment on TV are able to make that transition, that are able to build up their own audience, put on their own shows, and have the opportunity to enter comedy. Because I think, there's a lot of criticism sometimes about online comedians and, they do their sketches online, they do a live show, and they're rubbish because they don't have the skills of being a live comedian. And of course, you need to hone and develop those skills and practice, and you can't take that for granted. However, for me, it's about the entry point.
yeah.
And, it's having that opportunity to be on stage in the first place that is really important. So, future of comedy for me, I hope, is that there is a comedy niche for absolutely everyone. Anyone can consume it and anyone can make it.
And do you think that having the element? So I think what I have seen that is another aspect of helping the future of I think mainly live comedy is I think having so like next up live streaming events. Do you think that having that aspect, not only just for accessibility, but for people that might live too far away or might or might not want to go that night, but might then realize, oh yeah, there's that person and I didn't realize. Do you think that having it live stream helped to not only grow an audience but also let people experience it that probably couldn't experience it like a few years earlier.
Definitely. I think it's only surely it's only a good thing that if you're not able to go to a comedy club that you can click a link and you can feel that experience. I mean, it's it's not going to be exactly the same as being there. It never will be. You're never going to have that immediate connection with the performer on stage. That's a really special thing, but it'll give you a flavor of it, and I think it could inspire new comedians, or lead you to discover people on the other side of the world that you wouldn't otherwise know about. So I think it's really good thing.
Yeah, and I think what it also does is that it also said it also says to people that comedy is accessible, even though a venue might not have made the change to swap out stairs for a
Mm.
ramp or a stair lift.
Mhm.
I don't know many venues in general that have stair lifts. That would be comical. Just the comedians start doing the set as they're on the stair lift. And I think that it shows to an audience that comedy is for them and it is for everyone and I think it might help and it shows to younger people that might not be able to go into the clubs yet that when they're old enough they can be in the room that they
Yeah.
can be that person in the middle that gets picked on for wearing a really terrible t-shirt. And do you think that's another positive aspect that it's showing the younger generation that this is what it is like. It's not as scary as some people make it out to be.
I think so, especially if there is diversity in who you're seeing, because there is that you've got to see it to be it thing. And as I was saying before with Smack the Pony, seeing women be funny and do sketches must have got through to the young brain that I had in some way. And I think Kevin Bridges is obviously inspired. You mentioned Stephen Buchanan earlier. Stephen Buchanan, Mark Jennings, both boys from Clydebank, seeing someone like Kevin Bridges, the success that he's had, you've got to see it to be it. And I think definitely it could inspire young people
Yeah.
getting to see that.
And and do you think that because there's so much comedy on the internet, do you think that that helps to try and work out new ways of doing comedy? Like for instance, when the alternative movement turned up and everyone went, "Oh, we can do that." Do you think that because there's so much online, someone will be able to be the next leader of the next big change to comedy? Do you think that that's possible?
I think that the internet is a great place to experiment with alternative ways of being funny. And also, I think what the internet has done for so many people is they've found their own community, or they've found other weirdos like themselves, and like in a cool way. So I think I'm continually amazed at the creativity of people on TikTok, and the things that you see on there are incredible, actually. Like stuff that sometimes you see in the comments, it's like this deserves an Oscar, and I'm like, it kind of does. There's some incredible stuff out there that people are doing for free as well, which is wild. So, yeah, I think there's an endless amount of material
Yeah.
out there.
And I think what helps people to say, "Oh yes, this is something they can do," it is the fact that some shows that have been made for YouTube are now being recognised by the Emmys in America, and I think that that shows to people that even though it might not be a massive sitcom on TV that they want, it it's still as important because people are starting to recognise them. And do you think that's another aspect of it that will help a newer generation go, even though it's not what older comedians were doing, it's worth it because you can still get the same recognition even if the BBC or Channel 4 say, no, we don't want that. Do you think that's another way of showing to an audience that this is possible?
I think the balance of power has really shifted a lot recently because, I mean, that's amazing. I didn't know that about the YouTube thing, but I think, you know, the power that performers now have in being able to build their own audience and speak directly to audiences without the kind of middleman of a TV commissioner. is a big game changer. And even now, you know, I suppose if you were to compare the viewing figures for a lot of YouTube channels versus legacy media like telly, you know, it's changing so much. So I think it's an interesting time. I also think that perhaps one of the reasons why viewing figures on telly have gone down is because it goes back to this representation thing, and maybe there's less young people or young people's experiences represented on TV compared with YouTube and TikTok, and the immediacy as well. You know, you can immediately put something out on TikTok or YouTube and tap into the zeitgeist. TV, making film takes a long time. So it's very interesting what's going on at the moment.
Yeah. And so as we've got to this point in the interview, would you be able to remind people when and where they can discover your Edinburgh Fringe show?
Of course, so you can come to my friend's show at the Monkey Barrel Hive 2 from the 29th of July to the 10th of August. It is at 7:35 p.m. And although it's sold out advance tickets, you can turn up on the door and get and pay what you can.
Yeah. And so where can people, without giving away your home address, where can people track you down online?
Online, I'm on everything going. I'm chronically online. So I'm on Instagram, Zany Zaz. I'm also not well. I dip into X, but I try and avoid it. Same handle, Zany Zaz. I'm on TikTok, Zara Glad. One of my favorite mints. TikTok, Zara Gladman, and Facebook, Zara Gladman.
And there we have it. Another extraordinary, sensational interview. Yes, I can think of more S words, so let's just sparkle and shine. As the nativity film once said. And so thank you for letting me interview you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I love the format, the randomness of it.
And so there will be more interviews from me because I am a genius, not to toot my own horn. I am definitely not, I repeat, definitely not a narcissist. But you can only ask me to tell you that I'm not a narcissist because that might mean I am one. But who knows? Only time will tell. 30 more years, we'll find out. And thank you guys for watching. There'll be more wheeling about from me soon. I'll never say that again.